Welcome to episode 14 of the We'll Bring the Popcorn Entertainment Podcast. I'm Brad, this is Josh, and on today's show we're talking about X-Men 97 episode 4, Shogun episode 7, and the film review of Monkey Man.
That's right. And to kick off, we have, unfortunately, another tragic passing. This one's a little more tragic just because of the nature of, what happened and the age of the actor involved. But Chance Perdomo, who first kind of became popular starring in the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina on Netflix, and then also most recently played the role of Andre in the spinoff of The Boys Gen V. He unfortunately passed away at the age of 27 in a motorcycle accident, and our thoughts go out to his friends and family and all of the people that knew him, and it was just such a horrific way to go, man.
Yeah, absolutely hate to see that. I actually had an old coworker of mine lost his son in the same way. It's just, you hate to see that happen to anybody, and yeah, our thoughts go out to his family, friends, and everybody I know. He was just kind of starting to take off a little bit here, and to see it cut short because of a tragic accident, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, we're big fans of the Gen V show that he was just recently starring in as well, and they were getting ready to start shooting season 2, if I'm not mistaken, or getting pre-production underway at least. And obviously, all things aside, obviously we'll see what they do with the show, which is kind of secondary at this. But
I know it's already been delayed.
Yeah, for sure.
We also have another passing. So Joe Flattery has passed away at the age of 82. He was best known for SCTV, which was just full of some of the best Canadian comics and stuff that you've seen around, with John Candy, Martin Short, Harold Ramis, Rick Moranis, Catherine O'Hara, and a plethora more. I remember watching reruns of that show because I think it ran through the 70s and 80s. Hilarious guy. He was also the heckler in Happy Gilmore, which is a very memorable role for him. He was Western Union, which I forgot that was him. He was the Western Union postal worker that brought Marty McFly Doc's message. He also had some parts in Freaks and Geeks, Detroit Rock City. This guy had some great comedic timing, had some great bits on SCTV. He's been on a lot of stuff, and we're really sad to see that he's gone.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Like you said, a lot of people in our generation really remember him as the heckler from Happy Gilmore. I know my friends and I would yell at each other, especially when we're playing miniature golf. We'd be like, "You will not make this putt," or whatever. He was so good in that role. But to your point, he started. Well, he didn't star, but he was an actor in a lot of these films that we all have seen, and it's one of those guys that you hear the name, you may not put the face to the name, but then once you look who it is, you're like, oh my god, I remember him from such and such. And it's awesome to see their legacy live on through those roles that they've had. You know what I mean? And he was not an A-list star by any means, but still played important roles in a lot of the projects he was in. So our thoughts obviously go out with him and his family. Yep, for sure. But let's get into the news a little bit. One of the things I wanted to kick off talking about is Beau Willimon has been added as a writer for Dawn of the Jedi, which is going to be kind of the story that tells the beginning of the Jedi Order. And it's a film I'm very much looking forward to.
Yeah, we got James Mangold directing that, and it's also going to co-write it with him. But he's, of course, did Logan and has done a lot of comic book movies, done a lot of different movies. He's a great director, so I'm really interested to see his take. And yeah, Beau wrote some of the prison episodes of Andor season 1, which had some really great speeches, some really well done stuff there. Absolutely. So yeah, I'm really interested to see how this movie's going to turn out, because it's even taken us farther back than the Acolyte's taken us.
Yeah, so telling the beginning origin story of the Jedi is something that they haven't necessarily explored yet, and I'm excited to see what they do with it and kind of see how this group of people started, the whole beginning of the Force and the origins of that. It's fun that they're finally kind of delving into that lore a little bit, because everything we've done so far is about how well established the Jedi Order is, or even trying to kill off the Jedi Order. You know what I mean? So to go all the way back and tell the origins of it and see where it started, that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, like us getting these expansions now outside of the Skywalker saga, because you're kind of tied in that, because you have certain things you have to do, and now they're able to just go and kind of do whatever they want with this. I mean, we know there's books and other stuff that's in and out of
canon
and stuff for Star Wars, but it's going to be interesting to see exactly what they do with this, because they can do kind of whatever they want, as long as, they don't have to pull from those books, they don't have to pull from that things, they can do something really new and interesting.
Yeah, they'll be good. It could be good, like, source material to pull inspiration from necessarily, but to your point, they kind of have a little bit of free reign here to kind of tell the story they want to tell, which, can either be really good or really not so much. But I like seeing people like take like a concept like that and just kind of creatively run with it and see what they could do with it. It's got the potential to be really, really good. So I'm excited for that, and we'll keep everybody posted as we find out information on that film. Kind of keeping in the same universe, so to speak, Pedro Pascal has now been confirmed to reprise his role as Din Djarin in Mandalorian and Grogu. So it was a little bit on the fence as how involved he was actually going to be in the film, but it seems like we got that confirmation this week.
I don't know when this guy sleeps.
I don't think he does.
Of course, you got Fantastic Four, which is going to be filming this fall. He's currently filming The Last of Us season 2.
Yep.
50 other things probably in between there, but yeah, it's nice to see that he's back, because even though we know the stunt double does a lot of the physical stuff while he's there, and he does a lot of voiceover, it's important to have him be a part of it and not just be a secondary. So yeah, I think we're looking to see that in May 2026. So I would assume that's probably going to film after he's done with the Fantastic Four. Not really enough time, because I think Fantastic Four is supposed to start in August, with it being April. I can't see them getting that in, like Last of Us, Mandalorian and Grogu, Fantastic Four. I would assume he does that after.
I would say that makes more sense too. And like you said, since they do have the stunt double physically doing it, and if you've watched The Mandalorian, if you haven't watched it, a little bit of a spoiler, but they do kind of write it to where he's rededicated himself to not taking off his helmet at this point. So there's a lot they can do without him that he can just kind of lend his voice to. He doesn't have to be there for a lot of the shooting and production of this, which is kind of a fun spot to be in. It's kind of I like to call it the Rocket and Groot shooting schedule, where it's like, Bradley Cooper does the voice of Rocket, and Vin Diesel says "I am Groot" once, like 13 different ways, and he gets a nice payday for it. But he gets to set that schedule, so he's not as physically demanding needed for that, unless the story involves him taking his helmet off again at some point, which he would physically need to be there. But the fact that he's lending his voice to it once again is really cool, and I'm glad that they kind of figured all that out.
Yeah, and like you said, with Guardians, you got Shogun was actually doing so many roles with that, because he was being the stand-in for Rocket and everything, while, Bradley Cooper came in later to do the voice. So, yeah, it's interesting to see how they're going to do that, and if we're actually going to get him to take his helmet off in the movie again, or if they're going to stick to the storyline that he is sticking to his Mandalorian creed. Moving on, we have Drew Goddard, who wrote The Martian, Cabin in the Woods. He's set to write and direct a 5th Matrix movie. So I think Lana Wachowski is also going to executive produce. So you have one of the Wachowskis still a part of this. But we don't really have any information. We don't know if Keanu or anybody else is going to return to the Matrix now, if this is going to be a new story, if it's going to be a continuation or not. So we had the 4th one after many years. It kind of mixed results. Like, I enjoyed it, but it also felt a bit like, should they have gone back to the well? So it's doing a 5th one now. I hope he comes with a good story.
Yeah, and it seems like we've had this conversation ad nauseum several times over the last several weeks, especially as they keep going to the well of these films. And I honestly wouldn't hate I don't know if it's a hard reboot necessarily, or a soft reboot where there's a new Neo maybe necessarily that could come and be the next chosen one. Like something along those lines, if that's a story they want to tell. I don't know how much you can do with Neo and Trinity and, some of these other characters that kind of hasn't already been done. It kind of felt like the 4th movie left off as like okay, if they ended it there, we're fine with it. So they're doing another one. I don't know where they could go creatively with this, but I'd kind of hope for like not necessarily a hard reboot, but maybe a soft reboot where it's like, okay, you're preparing the next person to kind of come and take over if you want to continue telling these types of stories, or you can pivot and go a completely different direction. So we'll see. The jury's still out on that for me.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of hoping as well, is we just kind of get a fresh take on the Matrix now. But I do hope they go back to more practical stunts. That's what kind of made the original Matrix so popular, was we saw the bullet time and we saw, all the fight scenes. We're using wires and using camera trickery, and we're doing everything as much as they could with physical stunts. And then it did kind of take you out in the sequels, that a lot of it, especially like the Smith versus Neo fight, a lot of that was CGI, and it did take you out of it because it just wasn't that greatly done. So I do hope, as along with the story, we get more practical fights.
I mean, I'd be all for that as well. I don't disagree with anything you just said, because it got a little like out there like by the end, and it's one of those things, like, obviously with technology being significantly better now with how they shoot films, like, you could still add that element of practicality to it if you were to maybe not lean as much on tech for that, but we'll see what kind of story they want to tell with it.
Yeah. And speaking of a grand story and something huge and big here that we hope they do really well with, Sam Raimi has said he would love to direct Avengers Secret War. So, of course, he did Doctor Strange 2. He's done, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man film, so he knows comic books. He is a great director. Of course, he's had his horror films and everything else. But bring him back for Avengers Secret War would be great for me. Like, I think he could handle that really well, as long as they have a great script and, we have everything set for him, that he could be a solid choice to do Secret Wars.
There's a lot of people that would love to get their hands on that type of film. I know the directors who did Endgame, that were a part of like all of the big ones. I can't remember their names now; it's going to escape me. But they always said they would come back to Marvel if they could do Secret Wars, and the fact that they're actually doing
the
Russo brothers. That's who it is. Thank you for the reminder. And they said they would come back. We literally heard it from their mouths at Comic-Con when we went, and they said, what would get us to come back to Marvel would be to be able to do this. And the fact that they're doing it, we'll see who actually winds up getting that, because it's, if you know anything about the Secret Wars story, it's insane. It's like Endgame on steroids. So it's an insane story to tell, and how they can pull it off in a film, we'll see. Jury's still out on that, but Sam Raimi wouldn't be a bad option either. Like, he's a great director, like you said. Doctor Strange 2, it kind of got a little bit of mixed reviews but I still think it was a fine film for what it was, but we'll see. I know he's also wanted to talk about doing a final Spider-Man film as well, even if he doesn't get to do Avengers. So we'll see what his involvement with Marvel will actually wind up being.
Yeah, because there's a lot of talks about potentially revisiting Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man universe for Sony and doing Spider-Man 4. He kind of had comments about that where he said he'd love to do it if they asked him, but there really isn't anything in motion or any talks happening about it. But ever since, Spider-Man No Way Home, we've had those talks of, are we going to get another Tobey Spider-Man? Are we going to get another Andrew Spider-Man? Are we going to, finish off their stories maybe with one more? I think we even had Kirsten Dunst talked about that if they would have asked her, she would have come back for No Way Home. She would come back for Spider-Man 4. So it seems that we have everybody on board. It's just up to Sony and Marvel if they decide that's something they want to do as a continued multiverse story or something, of revisiting those while they're still doing their own Spider-Man 4 with Tom Holland.
Yeah, it's a lot of pieces in play. It would be fun. I think a lot of people would be super excited for it. I know we would be, because we both love those films. They're putting them back out in theaters for like a special run now. Yep. So keep your eye on your local theater for that. If you want to go back and see like the original Spider-Man or Spider-Man 2 with Tobey Maguire, those are coming out in theaters for like a short 1 or 2 day run for various things, or maybe like a week. But
yeah, I think starting here in like 2 weeks towards the end of April, about every week you have, I think, every single one of the Spider-Man movies, from Tobey to Andrew to Tom, all of them, I think, once a week are in theaters. So it's going to be fun to check out.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. So something you can go check out if you never got to see him in theaters, you always wanted to see him in that setting, it'd be fun to check out and potentially go see. So
it's also making me feel so old that we're having all these anniversary screenings coming up, because I saw there's the Mummy 25th anniversary screening with Brendan Fraser's Mummy, and I think 25th anniversary for Phantom Menace is also this year, and I'm just feeling so old with all these, because Spider-Man 1 came out when I graduated high school.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm just going to go cry in the corner for the rest of the episode, it's all yours.
That's a reminder to take your back pill.
I forgot to take my ibuprofen today.
Yeah, it's all good. So speaking of Marvel properties, one of my favorite Marvel properties is Daredevil, and the show that they originally had on Netflix was absolutely brilliant. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. And we got news today that the revival of Disney Plus Daredevil Born Again has finished shooting season 1. Very excited about that. They've shot the first 9 episodes. I know there was some confusion that they may have shot all 18, but it looks like they've only shot the first 9, which is exciting because they can come back to it and shoot the rest of it at a later time. I don't know how long of a break they're getting in between shooting here, but it seems like they got the first season in the can. I know the cast broke the news on social media, so John Bernthal was the first one in his Punisher gear, talking like, hey, season 1, wrap filming. Like, everybody's all excited about it now. I absolutely cannot wait for that show to come out, and I cannot express, like, the level of excitement I have for this show finally coming back.
I've tried to avoid some of the leaks from the filming, but yeah, when you have John and the rest of them posting, but it was great seeing Punisher and Daredevil standing side by side, and like, it's just going to be so good. But yeah, it was kind of surprising because originally when we talked about it, of course, it's gone through a reboot now. They filmed a few episodes. They decided they were going to completely redo it because they didn't like the direction it was going. Got a new showrunner and everything, but the whole time we thought it was going to be one season of 18 episodes. Now they're splitting it into 2 seasons of 9, which probably makes more sense, allows it to feel, because we really don't have that much when it comes to series anymore doing that. Like, the old standard was like, what, about 24 episodes per season for a regular TV show, but for most streaming shows, you are 9, 10, maybe up to 13 episodes, but you normally don't have that long of a season for streaming shows. So it kind of makes sense to see that they're going that direction. And I just hope it's a really solid 9, and the second half is even better.
Yeah, and it's the Born Again, the comic book itself that they're drawing from is a really fun story, and I hope they lean heavily into it. If you haven't read the comics or the stories from that, check it out. It's a really well done story arc, so I'm excited for that. But it's kind of supposedly tying into Spider-Man, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So there's going to be some potential tie-ins with the film, and they may go together because we're hearing like the next Spider-Man after the events of No Way Home is setting up Spider-Man to be back a little bit more as a street-level superhero instead of a big, like, more leaning into the friendly neighborhood aspect of Spider-Man. So hearing that they could possibly tie together with potentially Kingpin being the next main villain in Spider-Man 4, like having it all tie together, it's gonna be a lot of fun to see where they go with it.
Yes, please give me Tom Holland and Daredevil and Punisher and everybody together, at least one scene. Like, please,
yes,
bring them together.
I want that badly. I mean, you did have Daredevil in No Way Home for a brief cameo, but give me more of that.
Yeah, we need him in the suit with them together.
Yes.
Both in the suit. Like, yeah, I want that interaction, please.
I'm all for it.
So keeping with Marvel, we had casting announcement made for the Silver Surfer in the Fantastic Four movie, which wasn't exactly what everyone was expecting because they've decided to go with a female Silver Surfer. So you have Julia Garner has been cast in the role. She'll be playing Shala Bal. In iterations of the comics, she has been the main Silver Surfer at times. Other times she's been the wife of Norrin Rand, the male Silver Surfer. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do there, if we will have a Silver Surfer relationship or have Norrin show up as well, or if she's going to be the only Silver Surfer that we see.
Yeah, and you can't really tell a Fantastic Four story without including the Silver Surfer at some point, so it's going to be interesting to see how they incorporate that character in with it. I'm fine with them telling this version of the story as well. Shala Bal is a very diverse character, really. Like, that character's done a few different things in different tellings of that story. So with her potentially being the female Silver Surfer, I'm all for it. So let's see, what kind of story they're going to tell. Like, we've got a lot more details coming out as we get further along, as they get ready to start shooting this film later this year. And like, good on her for getting into this role. Like, it's going to sound like it's an important role, and like Fantastic Four is just shaping up to. I get more excited the more I hear about it.
She's a great actress, and if we do end up getting who we've been hearing for Galactus, it's going to be a really great movie.
Yeah, very excited about that. It seems like now that Marvel's finally got their hands on it, it's out of the hands of Fox at this point, who didn't have the best of success with the film. Marvel's got their hands on it, and I'm hoping that they'll take as proper care of this as they're going to, and really do a really good job with this story.
And I do feel like with it the first two Fantastic Four movies, they did, or was it the second one? Sorry, in the second one with the Silver Surfer, I thought visually they did a great job with the Silver Surfer, with the age of when it was done and everything. You had Doug Jones playing the body of Silver Surfer. I thought visually the Silver Surfer looked really good. So I'm going to assume they're going to do motion capture and she'll be all CG. Yeah. But yeah, I thought visually it looked good, so I want to see how exactly they do. Because, I mean, you think it's a hard character to do because it's a very chromy, shiny character. Yeah. And I hope they do a good job with the visuals for her.
Yeah, and we'll keep an eye on the news for that, because it's gonna be huge when it finally does come out. There's gonna be a lot of people with their eyes on that to see how that turns out. So.
Yeah, we'll have to see how many leaks they're able to prevent, because most Marvel fans and Fantastic Four fans have been waiting a very long time for Marvel's take on this. So there's going to be people trying to leak stuff like crazy. So if you don't want to know anything about it this fall, try not to pay attention. Anything that mentions Fantastic Four. Yeah,
and then obviously we're very, very much looking forward to it coming out next year. So it's going to be one of our most anticipated films for sure.
Absolutely.
But moving over into like another comic property, we have a film adaptation of the comic Evangeline is in the works as well. Olivia Wilde is actually set to direct the film, which is exciting, as well as being produced by Margot Robbie. So Evangeline, if you've never read the comic or anything, it's kind of about an angel who fights the forces of evil. It kind of seems simplistic, but it's a pretty well-known comic now that is finally getting made into a film as well.
Yeah. And it was created by Rob Liefeld, which I may have butchered his name, and Kathy Christian. So if you don't fully know Rob's name, you're going to know characters he's created, because he created Cable for the X-Men. He created Deadpool. He's created a lot of really well-known comic book characters. So, and I knew I saw from him that there's actually been a few times that they were trying to do this, but he's vetoed it and kept it from happening. And he was excited to have Margot and Olivia be taking this on. So it's going to be a fun one. I would say it's definitely going to be rated R. Just, I haven't really read the comic, but doing a little bit of research on it, it definitely looks like one that's going to be more Deadpool R for adults more than kids. So, but I'm looking forward to it, because, Olivia Wilde, she's a good director. You got Margot behind it. We don't know anything about casting who might be starring in it, but that could be a fun one.
Yeah, that's definitely one to keep an eye on.
Giving me kind of like heavy metal vibes, if you know that old series and everything. It gives me a little bit of heavy metal vibes.
Yeah, and I'd love for it to be shot in that kind of style too. So it'd be a ton of fun.
Yep. So talking about another animated property, or hand-drawn property here, we have Avatar: The Last Airbender. The season 1 was on Netflix, which we enjoyed. You can see our review in our archives here. But Albert Kim, who's a showrunner, has stepped down from doing seasons 2 and 3. He's actually moving over to Disney and working on the Percy Jackson series. So we don't exactly know what was behind this move. We hope he does a good job over Percy Jackson, but we do have the top 2 executive producers from Avatar: The Last Airbender are stepping up to be the new showrunners.
Yes, it seems like the show's still in pretty good hands. That it's behind the scenes. It's kind of had a rocky run of it, based on some of the turnover that's come out from them getting just through season 1. But Netflix does appear to be all in on it, and they are letting them shoot seasons 2 and 3. So we're still very excited about how they're going to tell that story. The cast is all locked in, and just getting to those next 2 seasons is going to be a lot of fun to look forward to. But it sucks when you lose a showrunner, because you wonder, are the new people that come in going to really change the tone and the direction? Or are they going to keep it the same? Hopefully just keep a smooth continuation of the story that they're telling and move forward with it. But I'm excited to see these guys that have already worked on it step up, because it kind of feels like it's going to keep that same tone without really changing a ton.
Yes, we know feedback on it was kind of mixed. We enjoyed it, by some people didn't like some of the changes they did. They left out some aspects, so I wonder if there might have been something with that they wanted to do some changes or not. But normally when a showrunner leaves, there are some changes that happens to it. But having people who are already there and a part of it bodes pretty well for it to at least keep a similar direction to it.
Sure, and we'll definitely keep an eye on that moving forward as well. But moving on to another animated property, actually, since Avatar was originally an animated series as well, we have a news from Paramount that potentially they want Tom Holland to star as Danny Phantom in a live action film, which if you know, if you're online, you see these like castings of different things. What if they made Danny Phantom? Tom Holland's kind of at the top of everybody's list of potentially playing a Danny Phantom. And it looks like that could potentially happen, which is crazy.
I don't know if I've seen any other actor mentioned for it, because I mean, you see a still of Danny Phantom, you see Tom Holland, like it's, yes, they go together, but it's going to be interesting to see if he has time for it, if they actually go through with it, because now we know Spider-Man 4 is going to be filming later this year. Is he doing any cameos and the other Marvel properties that are coming out? But he's also got a Romeo and Juliet play going on, which I think sold out within 2 hours, and they announced it's moving to Broadway because it's sold out so quickly. So he's got a theatrical run he's doing as well here. So if he has time, it would be a lot of fun to see him as Danny Phantom.
Yeah, and then that was an insanely popular cartoon when it was out. I know a lot of people grew up watching that as well, and it seems like that would be about as on the money casting as you can have for a role. Tom Holland's great. We love Tom Holland, but yeah, he's another one of those guys that's just like so busy right now, which is great. It's great for him if that's, you know, he's working on, you know, projects he's passionate about. I know he loves like theater and things like that. So the success that he's having with the Romeo and Juliet play, and then potentially doing this as well, like it's a lot of fun stuff on the horizon for him too. So I love to see it.
Yeah, I believe he also has Uncharted 2.
Potentially,
and where Mark Wahlberg gave an update a few weeks ago that they had the script and they were starting to prepare for it. So if he has time, we'll see if he has time. But hey, Pedro's finding time for everything, so I think Tom could too.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll keep an eye on that and see if he actually ends up getting cast and if that movie will end up being fun or not.
I love it.
Kind of moving on over to Amazon, we have Roadhouse that just came out recently with Jake Gyllenhaal and Conor McGregor. You know, the reboot of the Patrick Swayze cult classic. It has become Prime Video's most watched produced film debut ever worldwide, with over 50 million viewers so far. So I ended up watching it. I had fun with it. It wasn't the greatest, but it was a good time. I don't know if you've had a chance to check it out yet or not, but it's hard, especially with Patrick. You know, he lost his battle to cancer, the same cancer that took my dad. So there is a connection to with movies that we grew up with, Swayze and all that. Just it's hard to just see something else from these cult classics being redone. But it was fun. They made it entertaining enough for me.
I've heard very, very polarizing reviews of the film for sure, and it's one of those, like, I plan on watching it eventually. It's kind of in the middle of my priority list of things to check out, but it's one I'll definitely watch at some point. But yeah, like, that's insane viewers. Amazon's produced a lot of stuff, and the fact that that's their top grossing, or not grossing, but most viewed like property now is wild, because there's a lot of insanely popular stuff on Amazon, and the fact that this one is at the top is a testament to at least a lot of the buzz around the film. So good for it. That's crazy.
It was kind of surprising to hear that, because they've produced a ton of original content now.
Yeah.
And to have Roadhouse be the top one is, I mean, good on them. But I wasn't expecting Roadhouse to be hitting those type of numbers. I expected a lot of people who enjoy the original to come back and revisit it, but you know, that's a lot of people checking that out.
Yeah, and it seems like we're getting back to a lot of people consolidating into certain types of like films and movies and media, which kind of leads me to my next story. And Godzilla Kong: The New Empire, which we just reviewed in our previous episode, you go back and check that out in our archives. It opened with the largest opening weekend of the year, internationally and domestically, and it opened up just $2 million under domestically Dune Part 2, which has done incredibly well at the box office. But the fact that Kong and Godzilla is keeping up with that and is on par with it domestically is awesome. I love to see that.
Yeah, $194 million opening for Godzilla and Kong, which we had a lot of fun with. Like you said, go back and see a review. But it's great to see, though. Like, it seems like movies are starting to perform back to how they were performing before. Like, we've had a few that have been underperforming, but I think we're starting to see movie theaters kind of rebounding finally after COVID. Like, we've had a few hits in there, but we've seen a lot of movies underperforming, and now we're getting, so far, we've had quite a few big hits this year.
Yeah, you love to see it, and it bodes well for the rest of the year. Obviously, there's one film in particular we're both really looking forward to that we know is just going to blow it out of the water as far as money goes, which is obviously Deadpool. But the fact that more people are going to the theaters again, and it seems like that business is starting to really pick up for a wide variety of films. Like, obviously, with like some of the bigger properties like Marvel and Star Wars are always going to do pretty well for the most part. If not incredibly well, but to see something like Godzilla and Kong, which tends to do all right to pretty well, is done on par with the other biggest movie of the year so far. It's impressive.
Even with Monkey Man, which we'll be talking about later in the episode, our theater was pretty decently full for that, and that's kind of a smaller film and everything, so it was good to see that kind of full, other than, you know, we had some issues with people in there that made our experience a little less enjoyable, which we'll touch on after Monkey Man here. But yeah, we've been seeing the theater being a bit more fuller when we've gone, so that it's nice to see.
Yeah, I love to see it, because as much as obviously we're doing a whole podcast on how much we love these types of things, and to see that business pick up is just incredible.
Yeah. So what was a couple big movies for Reese Witherspoon back in the early 2000s, Legally Blonde, 20 years on now, we've got a spinoff series is going to be happening on Amazon Prime Video. So Reese is involved. We don't know if she's bringing her character back or if she's just executive producing, and they're rebooting or doing something else with it. But you have Gossip Girl creators Josh Schwartz and Stephanie Savage are working on the series with her, and I know those are huge for her stardom and bringing out, and to see them kind of going back to that. Well, that's what we've talked about with so many things in the last few weeks. We have all these properties that are 15, 20 years old now making a comeback, and we hope they do good with them, but it just, there's so many coming back now. And, but that one, again, that comedy, that style of it, will that work in 2024, 2025, whenever it comes out?
It could.
But it'll be interesting to see how they kind of reboot or restart, or even if it's with her, because there was talks for a while that a Legally Blonde 3 movie was happening. We don't know if that's no longer happening because of the series, or if the series will be different from the film, and they're still going with the film, as I believe it was Mindy Kaling from, Office fame was working on Legally Blonde 3. So potentially, if you're a Legally Blonde fan, you have a few things that you might be still looking forward to with this property.
And if I'm not mistaken, it also became a really popular Broadway production as well, if I'm not mistaken. Wasn't Legally Blonde a Broadway production?
I have no idea.
Yeah, well, it shows how much Brad pays attention to all theater. No, I'm just kidding. I think it was, though. But like you said, like that's a property that's coming back that I know that's a comfort movie for a lot of people that I know that are like, hey, I'm having a bad day, I'll put on Legally Blonde. Like that's a film it's a comfort film. So the fact that they're doing it in continuation for TV shows or movies, like it's been forever since I've seen either one of them. But no, it's cool, and hopefully it does well and does good, and they tell a good story, and it captures a lot of that spirit of those films, and helps that continue on into potentially, like you said, if the series does well, maybe they do pull the trigger on the third film. So it's good to see for sure.
Yeah. And of course, we've had a really weird kind of TV series, and because of the strikes and everything. So now we're kind of getting into that time of year already with April and May that we're getting, renewals, we're getting cancellations. So we have a few renewals with 911 is on season 8, which I spoke to you before we started today that I thought that's been on for like maybe 2 to 3 seasons max, and now it's on season 8. Like, I don't know. Good for it. I haven't ever got into the show. I'm not huge into those type of shows, but good on them to getting season 8.
Yeah, you don't see a whole lot of these network shows that last that long unless they're like really entrenched as like being incredibly popular, which apparently it is. Like you said, it just goes to kind of show also like how much we always joke around how much time flies, and people always talk about like how time just seems to be moving super fast. You couldn't have given me 5 guesses to guess how many seasons that show in particular has had, but it's a testament to the quality of the show if it's doing well enough to stick around. Because like you said, we see so many stories about these shows not getting any legs on a network because if it's not successful in one season, the studio pulls the plug.
Yep.
Or they don't greenlight a second season, or even if it's moderately successful, if it costs too much to make, they don't renew it for another season for budgetary reasons or whatever. But good on it, man, and it's pretty cool to see that a show like that have longevity like that, and like there are still shows around outside of the 850 seasons of Law and Order or whatever we're up to on that, or Grey's Anatomy up to like season 56 or whatever.
Well, we got Grey's Anatomy has been renewed for season 21 now, so a lot of my wife is a big fan of that show. She's been watching it since the beginning, but there's a lot of fans of the show that was curious if it was going to be moving on or not, because you have the main star is leaving, has left the show or is leaving the show at the end of the season, and for them to get a season 21 without Dr. Gray and Grey's Anatomy in there, it's one that you hope that they're just not stringing it along for as long as they possibly can, just to milk whatever they can out of it, and that for the fans of the show it gets a proper ending coming up. You still feel that the ending of this show can't be too far away, even though it just got another season renewal.
You say that, and then shows like this keep finding legs and keep coming around for more seasons. Like you would feel even if the quality dropped, the viewership could drop to a point where they're like, okay, is it worth keeping it around? It's like the NCIS effect, right? NCIS has been around for what seems like 100 years at this point, but it's still like one of the top like 10 to 15 most popular shows on television. Like it still does, incredible numbers every week, and as long as people are tuning in, they're going to keep making them. And
even with like The Simpsons, people have thought that it's going to be ending for the last like 20 years, and it's in season 5,000 now or something like that.
The internet likes to say that The Simpsons hasn't been good since like season 10, but they're on season 34, 35 at this point, or they may even have more than that.
I think it's in the 40s, isn't it?
It could be close to that.
Because it was like 1989, I think, was the premiere, so it's getting close to 40 years.
Like it's been around forever as well. Like they say the quality of the shows drop, but apparently there's enough people tuning in that they keep giving them more seasons and more.
It's also
episodes.
Predicting everything that's happening in the real world.
I kind of think it needs to go on forever just so we know what the heck's going to happen like 10 years beyond it. But like it's crazy.
Yep. And we do have our first cancellation of the season. So the Quantum Leap reboot has been canceled after 2 seasons of NBC. This was another one, which I watched the original show, but I never got into this. It was kind of the same with the Miami Vice reboot and everything else. I just never got into them. Like I watched the originals here and there as kids. I never watched the full seasons of them, but it is kind of sad to see, after 2 seasons, that one's gone, because it did seem to have a small but strong fan base to it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it didn't seem like it was big enough to keep it going for longer than that, which, if you're a fan of the show, like I'm sorry that your show, that you enjoy this much got canceled. It sucks to see when, like, these properties don't get renewed sometimes, because you could have, like, a strong, dedicated fan base that, like, really supported the show strongly, but for whatever reason, people at the networks decided it wasn't enough and, like, kind of pull the plug on it. It's a double-edged sword, man, because you still want news stories, but if you have stories that are in shows that are doing well, you want to see them keep going if they can, maintain that audience over a prolonged period of time and get to 20 seasons of a show. But
20 years later, I'm still waiting on Firefly season 2. Like it's got to come, right? It's coming.
It's on its way.
It's coming. Please.
Its way. But no, that's it. It's unfortunate, and obviously, you feel for all the people that work hard to put that show together and make it happen. Hopefully those people land on their feet and get attached to new projects and can, continue to, stretch their creative muscles and, earn the living that they need to in the industry as well. So thoughts to all those people, but, entertainment industry's tough, man. It's tough because it's hard. It's so hard to predict sometimes what shows are going to make it and what don't, because you got to keep it. It's almost like a sick sporting, like, viewing kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's like who's coming, who's going, what shows are sticking around, what shows are getting the axe. You can kind of count on like 1 or 2 hands the number of shows that you can almost guarantee are coming back, and then everything else is a crapshoot, right? So it's like it's crazy, and it's a hard industry to be in for sure.
Yep.
But now we're going to move on into our TV review of the week, which we are starting off with X-Men 97 episode 4. So we're now 4 episodes in. This episode is kind of a two-parter. It's got 2 different stories going on. The first half of the episode is one story, and then the second half is a different story with a different character that leads into a eventual part 2 that we're going to. But what were your initial impressions of this episode?
I enjoyed the stories that were told in this episode, especially the first one. So the first one takes you with Jubilee. It's her 18th birthday. She's wanting to go have fun, but Magneto, he's a guy who screams fun, right? So he wants to go to the arcade and he wants to blow off steam, But it was a fun throwback to our generation, to the 90s and stuff, because you had the Motendo in her room, which is, playing on the Nintendo name. It was, you had the X-Men Genesis cartridge in the system, but we had Mojo coming back. So, that was, I think, a multi-episode.
Yes.
In the original series, which is always just crazy. Mojo's capturing people and bringing them into their arena to entertain all these people. And, this time Jubilee and I've blanked on the other new character's name now, are brought into this arcade world. And you get a lot of throwbacks to, the X-Men, the arcade game. You got some different animation styles, and also loved, and it seemed like a little bitty nod to the Matrix, because they go up to a phone booth and what is this going to do? And they get sucked into a new world. But that one was a ton of fun.
It was. I really enjoyed that as well. You and I are both big fans of the old school arcade game. We played it a lot as kids, going to bowling alleys and arcades and playing them on the machines that were there.
I have it in my basement.
You do have it in your basement. I'm not jealous at all, but it was a great throwback for those of us. Like, I love some of the meta winks and nods to old school fans that they bring into the new episodes as well for like this new generation. And it's a fun story of like Jubilee trying to, she's torn because she wants to still have fun, but she understands her duties as a member of the X-Men. She's trying to get, I believe his name is Roberto, his to show his mutant abilities a little bit as they're going through this as well. Eventually, once they figure out that they're in a game at that point, it's just him still struggling with the fact that his family hates mutants, but he actually is one, and he's always held back on using his abilities, and he finally starts to use them a little bit, and there's a little resolution there. But it was fun, packed in like half of an episode. I kind of wish they'd explored a little bit more, but I think they got what they needed done in that half of it. And then you move to the second half of the episode, and it pivots to Storm, and Storm going through her journey to regain her powers at this point, or coming to grips with the fact that she no longer has them. Spoiler if you haven't watched it up to this point, but we're far enough now that if we're talking about it and you're listening at this point, you've probably watched it as well. So she's with Forge. She is, struggling with the fact that she's no longer has powers. He's trying to help her, and we kind of start on this journey of him trying to figure out ways to bring her powers back, but there's some interesting dynamics between the two of them.
Yeah, I enjoyed the second part. It's a little bit more dramatic and a little more heartfelt, because you got Storm trying to come to grips that she doesn't have her power. She can't feel nature anymore.
Yeah.
And then he's trying to bring her powers back, but it's not working. And then we also, like you said, you have a deeper dynamic that happens. The only thing about it is just how strange this was kind of mashed up.
Sure.
Because you have a really lighthearted, fun one with Jubilee, and then you have a much more emotional, but this one doesn't end. Yeah. So this one is a part 1, and it will continue in another episode, but apparently it's not the next episode. It's 2 episodes from now. So like you get a half of this, maybe not even half, because I think the next episode is a full story, so we're only getting a little portion of the story, and we're going to have to wait a couple weeks to get the conclusion. It was just kind of odd to me of how this was kind of shoehorned in, because they were both good stories, but they were vastly different from each other.
Yeah, and it's definitely an emotional swing from one half to the other. And to your point, that's the one complaint I would have at this point, is it feels a little disjointed, and we like to look ahead and plan ahead to see what stories they could potentially be telling in the next episode. And to your point, the next episode's not part 2. Part 2's in 2 weeks, so I'm not entirely sure what the motivation is behind that. Maybe let the story breathe for a week instead of coming directly back to it, but we'll see what the next episode looks like. But yeah, it was definitely a tale of two completely different like storytelling dynamics and emotions involved with it. Like it does cover a lot of ground, but to your point, like could this have been a separate episode on its own and not like smashed together into
like have because we haven't seen, of course, the second part of it, but have everything in a single episode, even if it's a longer episode, would it make sense instead of splitting it up with another story?
Yeah, so it was definitely an interesting choice. We enjoy both things that were going on in this episode, but it felt a little disjointed just because it was such a pivot from one to the other.
Yeah. It's like Rogue and Gambit are two of my favorite
Absolutely.
X-Men and loved from the animated series, but I also loved Storm and the voice actress for her. Her voice was so commanding. When she's speaking, when she's on screen, like Storm is just so commanding of the scene.
Love it.
And to see a little more depth and story with her was great. It just felt odd putting those two together. Like it's a good episode overall. Like both stories are good. It's just an odd pairing.
Yeah, I agree.
Like I would have rather probably seen, and again, we have to wait and see how the rest of this story plays out, but already to me it feels like, could we just not have had a longer episode and maybe let the Mojo episode go a little bit more? Because we did get, an underlining storyline with Jubilee was that she's still hasn't fully figured out her powers yet. It's like she knows some of it, but, Magneto doesn't want her going to have fun. He wants her to learn how to establish and use her powers greater than she does, which, without giving too much of the story away, there is something within that video game realm that helps her realize that I can do more than I currently am doing. Yep. It would have been nice to play with that a little bit more, but we also had a storyline that was mentioned about Genosha as becoming part of the United Nations and stuff. We could have had a little bit of story with that to fill out and left, this other one to the full episode. Just like I said, they were fun. It just felt so weird smashing a fully contained story with a part one.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. And it feels like maybe the next episode could be where the other characters have gone in the meantime, and it could be how they're continuing the story. We don't know. It's kind of the fun but frustrating part of getting one episode at a time a week to that you don't know where it's going next, but that's part of the fun, right? So it's part of the fun and taking the ride, and hopefully next week is the episode of where these guys go, because they do mention in passing that they are going to help with this Genosha joining the UN story that hopefully will be the next episode. So we'll see where the story goes for sure. But I'm still loving this.
Oh yeah, I still
loving
enjoy
the show.
It
it's hitting all the right nostalgia notes for me, and the modern take they're telling is fantastic, and it's keeping me interested every week.
Oh yeah. It's been a ton of fun. So you can check out X-Men 97 on Disney Plus. We're through 4 episodes now. Yep. And it's going to be fun to see where this goes. We have rumblings of a season 2 and 3 kind of being discussed, but we know the showrunner was let go right before this started, so we don't know where it may go past this. But yeah, we're having a ton of fun with it so far, and we hope you check it out.
Absolutely.
All right, so moving into the other show for this week is one that we've been gushing about for weeks now. We have episode 7 of Shogun, and at least to me personally, this episode was another just fantastic episode that dove even more deeply into this culture of 1600s Japan, about the struggles they're going through, and we got an interesting dynamic between Lord Tornaga and his brother shows up, that Lord Tornaga is trying to get his brother's army to join his battle of doing the Crimson Sky, one fierce attack against Osaka to take out Lord Ishido, but it doesn't exactly go as planned.
Yeah, this is an intense episode, man. It's I can't. There's no better way for me to describe it than it's just so good. This is such a good show, man. It's so good. It's so gripping. It's so compelling every week. Like we can't express our joy enough about how much fun we're having watching the show, because it's such a well-told story. It hits all of the right dynamic notes for us. It hits all of the right story beats. The writing is impeccable. The acting is amazing. It's another intense episode. Like you said, they're trying to launch this assault, and he's trying to do it without having to, it's kind of circumventing the historical culture norms of, you're honoring your commitments, and if you dishonor your commitments, it kind of results in you kind of, rather than living with the shame of your actions, taking your life and in service of your country and all that stuff. And he's working so hard to avoid having to do that. And the ways he goes about doing it, and he, gets to this point now where he's enlisting his brother for help. It goes sideways at that point, and you're kind of left by the end of this episode going, well, we've got 3 more episodes, and it kind of feels like these guys have like more or less resigned to their fate at this point, because they get kind of put in a position where they can't escape. Yeah. So it's like, okay, we've got you where we want you. You are being formally requested to show up here, confess your sins more or less, and take your life. Like, we're forcing you to give up now. Like, we've pinched you to the point where you can't avoid this anymore. What are you going to do? And that kind of leaves like the back half of this episode of these guys like coming to terms with the fact that what they've done is not going, or what they were trying to do is not going to work, or they don't think it's going to work. And you have characters like John Blackthorne, who is like, to heck with this. I have no interest in just laying down. Like, why are we not fighting harder? Or why are we not coming up with other things? And he kind of tells them off by the end because he's so adamant about getting back to his ship, and like he wants to do more, and like he keeps being kind of left at arm's length by Lord Toranaga at this point, and he's kind of had it at this point. He's like, man, just like let me do what I do best. And there's just so much that goes into this episode that's it's awesome.
Yeah, I've talked in the past about how Lord Toranaga seems to be this really expert chess player. He knows how to move the piece. He's putting so much in to his movement and everything. But this episode and the kind of last couple episodes we've seen, like, all right, maybe they've got him cornered. Maybe he doesn't exactly know what he can do now. Is there a bigger plan that's formulating in his head that we just don't know yet? Sure. He's trying to figure out, but we kind of got like, well, he hasn't made a move in a while, and we need to see what's going on, because it does seem like he's losing a lot of pieces, and it's coming down to just him and a few more pieces around him. Like, is there going to be a big plan? Like you said, we still have the 3 more episodes to go, so there has to be something, big that's still going to happen with him. But kind of going back on about, taking your own lives and everything, we start off the episode, which it kind of gives you a hint that maybe we've already gone into battle and we have this, and we're hearing Lord Toranaga being crowned as, hey, you've won. Well, we get a look at him, and he's a very young boy. And so we learn that 46 years ago, at 12 years old, he won his first battle. Yeah. And we see, surrender and taking his own, and I forget the general's name, took his own life in a very brutal fashion. Very much, yes. But that was kind of a big part of it, about different characters, and many offering to give their own lives, and some doing it, some being rejected. Like, they're asking permission to take their own life from people, and like, no, this is not going to happen, or wanting to take the lives of others. And we kind of got a fun scene, even though there's a lot of darkness in this episode, and there's been a lot of darkness in the series overall, but I still love those fun moments that we get. So we get one moment where John Blackthorne is on the beach, and Yabu approaches him, and they're talking to each other, but it's like, why am I even talking? You don't understand me. Right, and like, you probably don't even know how to use those when it comes to John and the sword. So he decides to basically give him a little training, but also humiliate him at the same time. So John pulls out the sword, and he's holding it with one hand. He's like, hold it right. And they have this little battle, but ends up ending a little differently, because Bentaru ends up coming into it, and you see his frustrations boil over, and he ends up going to Lord Toranaga like, hey, whatever's happening next, can I just kill the engine? Can I kill John Blackthorne and be done with it?
Well, he puts him in this to make an impossible choice, because he very clearly, like, it's such a weird dynamic with him and Mariko. Like, he loves Mariko, but he's also feeling dishonored and threatened about the fact that he sees that there's something clearly going on between John Blackthorne and Mariko, but Blackthorne has been put in this position to where it's like he's almost untouchable because of his connection with Toranaga at this point, but he's trying to find ways to go about it. And there's this powerful scene where, we've seen Mariko struggle with, the darkness of her past and what her family's done, and her just willingness to throw her life away at this point, but she still feels a duty and obligation to Lord Tornaga because he wants her there and he needs her there for everything that he's got planned. But it gets to this powerful scene where, to your point, Buntaro is like, "Hey, can I kill John Blackthorne?" And he accuses John Blackthorne of courting his wife, and of the everything that happens in that scene. And he's basically like, "Well, if you it's like." Are you serious about these allegations against John? Because you're also implicating your wife, and it's this this interesting interaction where it's like, okay, if you're serious about accusing him, if you're going to kill him, you have to kill her too.
Yep.
And he obviously makes the choice of kind of retracting a little bit and backing off because despite what had happened a few episodes prior, where he pretty brutally beat Mariko while he was drunk, like he still cares for her, and it's a weird, weird dynamic like that's going on there. But like he still cares enough about her that he doesn't want to see her die, so he kind of backs off, and it's a pretty powerful scene.
Yeah, because we moved right in after that to Mariko having an ultimatum given to her by Lord Tornaga, which, she doesn't really give an answer to. Like, he says, you either have to do this or you have to do that, but she, kind of goes around it with it, which was, I thought, really interesting to see that there is something that we felt is there, but she doesn't want to answer, but she just rather take the option 3, which Lord Tornaga wasn't. Try not to go too spoiler. It's hard not to talk about the stuff, but Lord Tornaga didn't want to have anything to do with that, and we kind of ended. But yeah, there was such a back and forth dynamic about how they look at life and how they look at death and how they look at honor, and how all of this was playing out around this situation where basically his brother has come to the fishing village, has been invited. They're thinking they're going to talk about this, plan that they're going to do. And his brother ends up flipping the script on him and changing every aspect of what Lord Tornaga thought was going to happen.
Yeah. And it leads to, like you said, by the end of the episode, like Tornaga is like dealing with resigning his fate that, maybe my plan wasn't going to work. I'm going to die. I don't have a choice. At least that's the way it's playing out. But to your point, there's 3 episodes left, and he's the guy in the show. Like, he's the main character, so it can't be just 2 episodes more of him stewing over this. So something has to happen. I'm excited to see what happens next, and either how he gets out of it or where they take the story beyond this, because I still think there's this grand battle that has to happen somewhere. So something has got to give at this point. And the anticipation is really killing me because I'm like, I really want to know what happens next. And that's like we say, that's the fun and frustrating part about going on this weekly episodic ride is we don't know because it's not out there yet, obviously. But how is this going to resolve itself? Because there's so much lingering here and there, and everybody's posturing, but we don't even get any look at Ishido and what they're doing on their side in this entire episode. So there's
we get little information that comes from the brother and what's happened with him without giving too much of that story. And we do get a little bit. Well, we don't even see Lady Oshiba. We don't see Ishido or anything. But it's such a. I want to know what's happening. Like it was said with Lord Tornaga, he's such a great chess player. He's got to have a secret move. He's got to have something that he's just waiting to build. Yeah, you're taking out my pieces while I'm about to put you into checkmate. There's got to be something going from there, especially as we know this is going to be a self-contained 1-season basically mini-series now. We know it's not going to continue on. So, we've got quite a lot still to happen. But that's not to say anything with the show. Like, it's pacing. Everything has been fantastic. There's been so much depth that's being built and, everything that's been really just letting you know how things are going to be, how these characters are. We've got such great world and character building with it. And I keep going back to Yabu. I just love, even though he hasn't had a whole lot to do in the last few episodes, I assume something big will be coming up for him. I just love the Yabu character. He brings that kind of crazy lightness to things, but also we got to see a scene with him fully decked out in his armor, and he has the best helmet
I love it.
in the series because he's got this big like Fabio mane on his helmet that's just so good. Like everyone else is looking very which I don't know if that's traditional or not, knowing about the culture and stuff, but everyone else looks very traditional to what we seem to know about the look of samurai and everything else, and he's just got this humongous mane, like lion mane of hair.
That man is just doing his own thing and loving life. So we're looking forward to seeing how the last several episodes of this play out. Episodes 1 through 7 are now currently available on Hulu, Disney Plus, and FX. You can catch every episode weekly as it drops for the next couple weeks as well. It's a show that we said it for the last several weeks now. We cannot recommend it enough. It's quickly becoming higher and higher on our list of our favorite TV shows ever at this point. So
this is a must-watch show.
Yeah, this is definitely one that we recommend you checking out when you get the time. If you want to wait till all 10 episodes come out, that's great as well. But if you want to catch up and join us on this journey every week as we talk about it, that would be great as well. But moving into our film review now, we have gone and seen the film Monkey Man that we'd like to talk about now. This film has had... it's got quite an interesting backstory as far as like the production of the film and like what it took to just get this film out there, like let alone what the story tells. So the story of the film is this man who has witnessed the death of his mother at a very young age from a group of corrupt officials at this point, police officials, that brutally murdered his mom in front of his eyes, and he's basically spent his entire life plotting his revenge against these people and what it takes to get him to this point. And that's kind of a very high level like interpretation of the story that they're telling, because there's a lot more intricacies to it, of course, but I've really enjoyed the telling of this film. But man, this seems like it had such an interesting backstory of just getting put together to put out into a film itself.
Oh yeah, that's the story behind it was just so many things went wrong when they were filming it. So like Dev Patel wrote, directed, and was the main star of the film. Yep. So in training for it, he had several toes broken by but doing stunt training. So the stunt fighter with him stomped on his foot and broke several toes. Yep. Then they move into filming, and he breaks his hand in the very first fight scene that they had to film. And he kept it secret. Somehow he continued on the rest of the day with a broken hand, finished filming, flew to another city to have screws and other work done that, he literally asked the doctor, I need it hidden. I can't have a cast. I can't have this. I need you to hide that I've broken my hand. Returned back to set the very next day and continued recording the fight scenes and everything else. Like, just that alone was wild. But we also learned that, I think Netflix was originally going to put this movie out, and they pulled out of it because there is a very heavy political element to this about politics in India, corruption in India with the political parties and stuff. And they didn't feel great about that. And it was really up to Jordan Peele came in with his production company and said, we'll put it out. So and it was almost shut down before it even began filming because of Netflix pulling out of it. And even if that wasn't crazy enough with those two aspects of it, they had cameras breaking that they did not have the budget to replace while the film was going. This was all filmed during COVID, so they had all the lockdown protocols and stuff going. They had to film in, I think, Indonesia instead of India because of that. They lost their production designer. They lost a stunt team, which was a stunt team from John Wick. Yep. And then they actually had someone die in the middle of production. So their gaffer died of a heart attack while the film was being made. So, you had all this insane stuff and unfortunate stuff happening with someone passing away. Like, you could tell in the end from the direction, which I thought cinematography and the way it looked was really good. Yeah. You could tell this was a definite passion project from Dev Patel just to get this film made and get it out there. That's kind of the best quality he could possibly get it out with all the hardships that he had to go through to get this made.
Yeah, it's such an interesting story. Like, obviously, when films get made, all things considered, for the most part, with a few hiccups here and there, shoots go fairly well, and we don't really hear a ton. This is one of the crazier, this was such a tough film to get completed at this point. You know what I mean? Like you said, started filming it during COVID. There was all the different shooting issues, aside from all the issues that people had shooting films during COVID. But like you said, Dev Patel putting his body through literal hell to, you know, just get to film this project. Like, you could tell how much it meant to him. And there are a lot of, like, just from the film itself, like, to talk about the actual aspects of the film, there are a lot of political undertones, which, if you know anything about Jordan Peele films, or if you're a fan of his work, he doesn't shy away from having political undertones in a majority, if not all, of his films. His films have very political themed, like, if they're not completely blatant about it, but it's there if you know to look for it. And that's kind of a hallmark of his story. So I see why he would want to attach himself to a film like this. And it's a good film. Like, at the end of the day, it's still a very good film. If you are fans of the John Wick films, you will love this film as well. They don't shy away from it. They literally mention John Wick.
It kind of John Wick and The Raid get a little bit from, because it has very brutal action to it, in which we know now, knowing that backstory, that some of the fights had to be, you know, changed and mixed up because of him breaking bones. But it's definitely got a big John Wick, The Raid type of mix with, you know, the Indian kind of story behind it. But yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch, even though it's a very dark story. We say fun in the way that we enjoy watching it, not like we're laughing and having a really good time with it, which there were some jokes and stuff with it, but it was an entertaining watch.
And then we might have to qualify what we call fun, in the sense that the tone of the film is very much not fun. It's a dark, like, he deals with this tragedy and him plotting his revenge, and the way he goes about getting it. It's very creative. The way they tell the story, like, he's working his way up through, you know, doing odd and end jobs, fighting on the side to kind of get the funds he needs to make this happen, and build the connections that he needs to get to the people he needs to get to, who are so corrupt that they're very well protected and not necessarily the easiest to get to. And the ways he has to get to them is crazy. The fight scenes are fantastic. They are good. They're very well done, despite the, you know, physical limitations that Dev Patel had.
It was very hard to tell at times that he had broken
If you didn't know going into it, you couldn't have really told too much that he dealt with the things that he dealt with while trying to make it. Like you said, very heavily John Wick influenced. The literal last fight scene of the film, the big rampage, like, get to the guy I've been trying to get to this entire film, he's dressed almost identical to John Wick, with the black on black, like the black suit, the black undershirt, like he looks a lot like John Wick in this, and he, you know, just kicks a lot of butt like John Wick, and it's a really, really well done, like, last rampage scene as well. It's so much fun to get through, and it was definitely worth a watch. Now, our viewing experience had its issues as well, which we'll touch on in a minute, but at the end of the day, I definitely recommend watching this film. Like, it's worth a watch for sure. I would recommend watching it.
Yeah, there's really an interesting parallel going back to how all the troubles that the movie went through getting made. You know, the main character in the main story deals with an Indian god that, you know, this monkey man who thought he was seeing this really shiny mango, and he wants to go up and eats it, but he ends up eating the sun. And so he's punished by the other gods for eating the sun. And we see that the character in the movie is going through punishments. You know, he's down on his luck. He doesn't have much money. He's having to, you know, steal and swindle and fight and do all this stuff to survive. And it's kind of a parallel to how he had everything go wrong making this movie, had to fight and survive because I think he even said it himself, like, he was ready and expecting just to be shutting down the production and never get this thing made. Like, there is some interesting, which unfortunate, parallels between the overall story with the hardships that the character went through and what Dev Patel went through just to make this movie. So I found that, knowing all that afterwards and going back and looking at the story of the film, like, he went through a similar journey that his character did. Because I don't think we even got an actual name for his character. He called himself Bobby, but that was after the bleach that he used and stuff. So I don't think we actually ever got a true name for his character in the film.
No, and at the end, I don't think it was really necessary either, but it was definitely like an art imitating life kind of situation when you know the whole backstory of the film, which is very interesting because knowing it now like adds a little bit more appreciation I had for the film than I had when I watched it. Like I still enjoyed the film as well, but knowing some of this backstory now kind of makes me appreciate the fact that this film's like it was even available for us to watch. Because there was the way it sounds like it went through making this, there were several different times where this film could have just been shut down. Shuttered and never seen the light of day. But the fact that they were able to put it out, I'm so happy that we like took the time to go to the theater and support the film and see it because that's incredible, man.
And yeah, it had its issues. We're not saying it's a perfect film. It, know, you can hear from the production and everything that went into it. It's a lower budget. They had to struggle to get it done. So there might be a little forgiveness with things because of knowing that story of just feeling for his hardships and stuff. Because there were some things that we showed in the trailer that we thought we were getting some big sequences with things. And I do this motion because of some stuff with the masks we didn't see as much as we kind of thought we were going to see, especially with one version of it and other stuff. It was just like 15 seconds and that was it. I'm like, wait, what? And we're not going back. Yeah, we're not going back to it. Yeah, we're definitely not going back to it. I was wanting to see more of it. So it was more of my personal, like I wanted to see a big action sequence done in a certain way. And we more went John Wick and it kind of dropped how the Monkey Man action was at that point. And went Raid and John Wick like full on with that sequence. But it's a little nitpicking stuff, and some of the political stuff was kind of hard to watch and see with some of this stuff and just how corrupt and bad these people are. But overall, it was an enjoyable film. Like you said, if you like the John Wicks, it's not as good as the John Wick movies, but it's still a solid action flick that I got enjoyment out of. And you know, it's very dark, very brutal action, but it was enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, and there's a couple scenes in the film that could be a little triggering for some people, just to deal with that are more sexual in nature as well. Not super graphic by any means or anything like that, but it's definitely some unsettling things that some of these guys are doing, and you know things of that nature. But overall, though, it doesn't hinder the film in any way, I don't think, but definitely things that could trigger a few things for some people. But
yeah, as you mentioned, it doesn't really shy away from much of anything. Like nothing is kind of off limits of dealing with it, and maybe it's because they really wanted to paint the picture of how this corruption is and how people are treated in India and around there, and they wanted to bring light by showing the darker aspects of things.
Yeah, and adding a little bit of authenticity to it could, you know, help deliver that message as well. So in the context of art and storytelling and, you know, trying to mirror some possible real life things as well, like they do a good job of containing it within the story like that, I think. So definitely one to check out. And Monkey Man is in theaters now, and we definitely recommend you taking the time to check it out, especially if you're a fan of like the Raid films, John Wick, and things of that nature as well. We think you'll get enjoyment from it for sure.
And we both kind of wanted to touch on a little aspect of that. We dealt with this movie. We've dealt with a few movies now. You know, we go and see the movies just like everyone else. We don't have early access to anything yet. We're out in the theaters watching with everyone else. And unfortunately, we keep dealing with just people who do not have courtesy for others during movies. You know, a movie can be a fun experience to be in a theater with other people and seeing their reactions, but that's a cheer or a clap or a laugh or a cry or something like that. Not full-blown conversations. And that's kind of what we had to deal with Monkey Man, is that we had a group of people that just decided they were going to have a full-blown conversation throughout the entire movie, and not quietly either. They weren't whispering. They were just full out. They showed up to the movie 30 minutes late. You know, the previews were already over. The movie was starting. They had their phones on maximum brightness and out. They also had their phone set to flash their light whenever a message or a phone call came through, and had it laying up so they could see the light flashing. Like, they had zero courtesy for anybody else. Like, it's okay if there's one little bit of like, oh man, that was awesome, or something like that. Not full-blown conversations that may not even have anything else to do with the movie. Like, have some courtesy, please, for other people, or just stay home. Like, you don't need to have a conversation during a movie. Have that after the movie. Your phone needs to be put away. think about the enjoyment of everybody else around you, not just your own personal, I don't care, I'm going to do whatever I want.
Yeah, there's a lot of that now, but it's getting a little out of hand in the theater experience. And like to your point, like if you want to watch these movies at home and have conversations and all of that, go for it. Hey, go nuts. Do whatever you want to do in the comfort of your own home. I don't think either one of us have an issue with that, because the beautiful thing about watching a film at home is you can pause a movie if you want to, or you can go back and, rewind a little bit to maybe if you missed something because you were, having a conversation about something that overtook what you were seeing. You can't do that in the theater, and you can't do that with all the people around you. And we're starting to see it a little bit more than we have like in recent years, where people are just going to the film. Like if you're not there to see the film, why are you in the theater? Yeah. Like if you're not going there to like at least take it. And to your point, it's not a question of like, oh, I can't believe that's crazy, or like, something short like that, but to have conversations that aren't even relevant when you're around other people who are trying to enjoy the film, like it takes you out of the experience of the film a little bit. Like even watching this film, I found myself distracted, and you were sitting closer to them than I was, and I was finding myself to get distracted because I'd look over because I'd see a flash coming on the side of the side of my, I'm like, what are these people doing? Like, If you're so busy that you can't carve out time to sit through a movie and watch it, like to your point, wait and see it when you can, or wait and see it at home. Like, yeah, we're all about going and supporting movie theaters and going and seeing these films the way they're meant to be seen on the big screen, and taking part of that communal experience is wonderful. And like you said, there are plenty of times where it's so fun to be in a packed theater because of, like seeing some of these big comic book movies where something crazy happens and everybody cheers.
Cheering and screaming and yelling, even getting up and clapping when Cap gets the Mjolnir and everything.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Those are great. And laughing at a movie is awesome, and that's fun as well. But
not laughing in a conversation while something very dark and serious is going on, which is exactly what happened with Monkey Man.
Yeah, and it's jarring, and it's just be courteous of the people around you. Like if you can't sit and enjoy the film without being on your phone 24/7, or just having so much going on that you can't break away and enjoy that time, wait until you can have time to do so and enjoy the film too. Like, don't ruin the experience of people that are wanting to also pay their hard-earned money to go see these films and have these experiences. And it really does hamper your enjoyment of the film. Like we said, like I still enjoyed the film, but there was like times of it that I was getting taken away from like paying attention to something that could have been critically important in the film because the flashing lights or the conversations. Like if you can't keep that out of the theater, don't go. Like it's like find the time to go see it when you can, and you don't have these distractions. And if you have too many distractions, just watch the film at home, and you can watch it at your own pace and talk and do all the other things you want to do. But just have some courtesy for your fellow people that just want to go and lose themselves for a couple hours while we watch these films and see these stories that entertain us and bring us joy and make us feel all the emotions that we love to feel when we see these films. Like just courtesy for your fellow people.
Yeah, so please keep the conversations till after the movie. During the trailers is fine, but once that movie starts rolling, once the credits start rolling, go ahead and talk to, but don't do it during the movie. Keep your phone away, put it up. You're going to the movies. Block that time off that people know you're at the movies, you're not to be bothered, so you can be fully engaged into what you're doing and you're not bothering someone else. Because, I have pretty solid peripheral vision, and I'm just seeing lights going off beside me. And this is the flashlight on the phone just blinking like a strobe right next to me. And like I said, when I mentioned when you were talking that there was a really kind of dark, dramatic scene, which I think it was involving someone being very hurt in the film, and they're having conversation and laughing during this very kind of serious part. And it's just like the flashing lights, laughing during a serious part. It
takes
hurts
you out of it a little bit.
Other people's enjoyment. So please don't be those people. Please keep your conversations till after the movie. Keep your phones away so everyone can enjoy the great experience that is going to a movie.
Yeah, and if you have to have these conversations, we're not saying like, okay, emergencies can't happen or something happens while you're in the theater. Step out of the theater and have that conversation and come back to the theater and enjoy the film. Like don't just sit in your seat and ruin everybody's time.
We're talking 5 to 10 minute span of nonstop talking. about stuff that's not even related to the movie.
It was pretty ridiculous.
But yeah, don't be those people. No one likes those people. Just don't be them. No. Stop it.
But thanks for coming to our TED Talk. So we wanted to get that out there because we felt it was important, because it is something we're starting to experience a little bit more here lately, and it's just a habit it's just a bad habit. Yeah, it's bad etiquette. There's an etiquette to it, and I know it kind of probably makes us sound a little bit snobby when we say it, but it's just, we go for that experience, and we're paying our money just as much as anybody else is, and we're going to have that. We like losing ourselves in watching these films and taking as much from it as we possibly can, and we don't want to have that experience ruined by people who just have no respect for the intentions of others.
Absolutely.
So sorry for going on a little bit of a rant there, but we felt passionately enough that we felt like we wanted to address it here and just get it off our chest. So that'll be the last time we mention that. But just
maybe, depending on how many more people we run into.
That is also true. We could speak about specific experiences, but our thoughts on the movie going experience and that type of thing, we wanted to get that out there as well, because we do take that pretty seriously. Like I said, if you're laughing and having a good time in the context of the story that they're telling, great. Laugh, all of that's all good. But if it's not related to the film, just save it for afterwards, or step out of the theater if you really need to.
Yeah, so we know maybe a few words here and there, but like I said, these were 5-10 minute conversations that were happening. So, yeah, thanks for listening, but just, please don't be those people. Just be considerate of others, that we all can enjoy the movie-going experience.
Absolutely.
So coming up this week, we have in theaters Civil War. So this looks like to be Alex Garland's final film. He's kind of said after doing this movie, I don't know if it was because of this movie, but it was movies in general, he said he just wasn't feeling the passion for doing movies anymore. Sure. So there's been some earlier reviews and things out for this that we've heard some really good things about Civil War. It's going to be another one that's got very serious subject matter. We're looking forward to checking that out. On sale digitally this week, we have Kung Fu Panda 4, Russell Crowe's Sleeping Dogs, and Anthony Hopkins' One Life film. All of those will be released digitally for purchase on April 9th.
Love it. And Kung Fu Panda 4, you can check out our review of that film in our archives as well.
Yep. Coming on TV, the kind of biggest release we have coming out this week is Fallout on Prime Video. Yep. So this is an adaptation of the video game series, which I'm really curious to see how they do, because it's been a fun game series. I've played almost all of them.
Sure.
I don't think I got into Fallout 76 too much, because it had a lot of issues when it first came out, and that kind of put me off, and then I had a backlog to play. But I've heard good things about it now. I just haven't got back to it. But it's always been a quirky, fun, weird, odd, interesting type of video game series, because it's, set in apocalyptic, but it's got some like Western. It's got a lot of mix of different genres to it. So I'm really curious to see how they've done this series.
Yeah, the games are fun. I've enjoyed them as well. And seeing some of the trailers for it, it definitely looks like an interesting watch. Definitely one worth checking out for sure.
Yeah, so you'll be able to see that premiere on April 11th on Amazon Prime Video.
Absolutely. So that'll do it for this week's episode of We'll Bring the Popcorn. Before we head out, I wanted to bring light to our merch giveaway that we're currently doing. We do have merch now, as you can see on the table here. We can't thank everyone enough for placing their orders already for their shirts and other merch items that we've done. Cannot thank you enough. We appreciate that support. If you go to willbringthepopcorn.com, you can find all our information about our merch and our giveaway that we're doing through the end of April. So you have until the end of April to enter to our giveaways. You will win a free shirt in the size and color of your choice. The sizes of our shirts range from small to 5X. So we run a wide gamut of sizes, so don't feel like you're going to be limited if you win, no matter what size range you fall into. And you get the color of your choice as well, so that's really cool. These are really nice shirts, actually. Like, feeling the fabric here, they're really well made.
It's a Gildan heavyweight.
Right, so it's durable, and it's going to hold up really well. And you can also get a copy in our merch giveaway of this copy right here, specifically that I'm pointing at, of Ghostbusters 1 and 2 in 4K. So if you win our giveaway, you get a shirt in the size and color of your choice and a copy of this movie right here. We cannot thank you enough for your support. You have until the end of April to get your entry in. All of the information can be found at willbringthepopcorn.com. Coming up next week, we will be giving you our thoughts on Episode 5 of X-Men 97, as well as Episode 8 of Shogun, and our thoughts on the film Civil War. So for now, my name is Josh, this is Brad, and we'll see you next week.